Torrance Council Member and veteran of the United States Air Force, Tim Goodrich.
Happy Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day. Inevitably, you as veterans will hear that time and time again over the next couple of days. Well, what is Veterans Day? It wasn't always Veterans Day. In fact, it started off as Armistice Day. It symbolized the cessation of fighting between the Allies and Germany at the end of World War I on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. A few years later, in 1926, the United States Congress passed a resolution officially recognizing the end of World War I, and in that resolution were these words: whereas it is fitting that the recurring anniversary of this date should be commemorated with thanksgiving and prayer and exercises designed to perpetuate peace through goodwill and mutual understanding between nations. It wasn't until 1938 that Armistice Day became an official holiday. Then, in 1954, a resolution was passed renaming it as Veterans Day, and that is how we remember it today. So all this talk about veterans. What is a veteran? If you go out and you talk to any member of the community, inevitably you'll get a different answer. It's hard, if you haven't served, to be able to say what a veteran is. In fact, states and the U.S. government don't even agree on what a veteran is. Title 38 of the Code of Federal Regulations, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, defines a veteran as a person who served in the active military, naval, or air service, and who was discharged or released under conditions other than dishonorable. You turn to the state of California, and their definition is a little bit different. It is any person who served in the active military, naval, or air service of the United States, or as a member of the National Guard who was called to and released from active duty or active service for a period of not less than 90 days, or was discharged from the service due to a service-connected disability within that 90-day period. That's the legal definition of a veteran. But we all know that to be a veteran is so much more. Some words that come to mind for me when I think of a veteran. Veteran is a volunteer. A veteran is an idealist. A veteran is somebody who is willing to sacrifice. Let's take that first one, volunteer. Now, there have been some exceptions over the course of American history because of the draft, but by and large, America's military is comprised of volunteers. Sure, some people join because they feel they have no other options in life. They need the money for school later in life. They need the employment and the stable paycheck. But by and large, I think you can say just about everybody has volunteered for the service to their country. There's 22 million vets in the United States today, out of a total population of 320 million people. That's about 7% of the entire population. That's a very small percentage of our country's population that has volunteered and taken the oath to serve their country with their life, if necessary. If you take a look at those who have served in our most recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, it is actually less than 1%. I guess that makes us the other 1%. The veteran is also idealistic. I'm sure all of you remember a time during your military training where you looked up at that flag like I did during field training exercises. As that flag was being run up the flagpole, maybe a tear running down your cheek because of everything that flag represented to you and all the ideals of America behind that flag. The ideals of freedom, opportunity, and democracy. A veteran is also somebody who sacrifices. And we know those sacrifices well. A couple of examples. Ron Kovic, a local veteran, lives in Redondo Beach, the author of Born on the 4th of July. And I think every one of us here has seen that movie or read that book and has known his struggle. And he continues to volunteer today by telling his story and making sure people know of the sacrifices that he and his brothers and sisters have made. Max Cleland, if you don't know that name, he is a Vietnam veteran. He was a triple amputee, lost both his legs and use of his right arm. But he rose to great things in his life. He persevered despite the challenges. He went on to become the United States Senator in the state of Georgia and also the administrator of the Veterans Affairs Department. He didn't let his injuries get him down. Tammy Duckworth, double amputee from Iraq. Her helicopter crashed. She lost both of her legs. She went on to become the first Asian American woman elected to Congress in Illinois and now serves as a United States Senator for that same state. She didn't let her injuries get her down. And Thomas Young, he enlisted 2 days after September 11th. On his 5th day in Iraq, on what is known as Bloody Sunday in Sadr City, his unit came under ambush and he was shot, which caused him to become a paraplegic. That battle killed 8 service members and wounded 51. Thomas was a friend of mine. Unfortunately, he's no longer here with us. Today is the 3rd anniversary of his death. He was the same age as me, and when he was injured in Sadr City, it was only 3 months after my time in Iraq and 5 miles away from where I had been. Kind of hits close to home. But I know many of you have those similar stories based on your service and know other people who have sacrificed as well. These are sacrifices of just a few, but I know that you in particular have made sacrifices. Maybe not as great, but I know that when you served in the military, you had low pay, you worked long hours, you maybe went on deployment and served extended time away from your family, and all the other accoutrements that come with military life. But we did it willingly. Today, I'm going to ask you to volunteer once more. Our fellow veterans are in need of help. Some of them are out in the streets without shelter, without a home to live in, some without food. They need help. The suicide rate amongst veterans is more than 3 times the national average. They need help. They need our help. I also need your help with one other thing. You remember that congressional resolution that said this holiday was designed to perpetuate peace through goodwill and mutual understanding between nations? Well, change that nations to people. Right now we live in a hyper-partisan world. And the people that we're arguing with, they may not wear the same political stripes, but they had the same stripes on their sleeve when we served next to them. I think that bears remembering in terms of our national discourse, so that we can return to a time of greater civility and greater understanding in this nation, for the good of our nation. I take solace in 2 things, though, despite this hyper-partisanship. Many of you, like me, watched the Ken Burns documentary, The Vietnam War, as it aired on TV recently. It was a difficult thing to watch, but one of the things that I took away from that is we think things are really bad in our nation right now, and some of us who may be younger don't have the historical memory for this, but when you watched that documentary, you saw students being killed on college campuses by our own National Guard. You saw people bombing federal government buildings. Fortunately, we're not, in my opinion, quite to that degree of hostility, but it's incumbent upon us as veterans, as volunteers, as people who make sacrifices to make sure it doesn't get back to that point. I'm very thankful to live in Torrance because it's a city that honors veterans. We have so many programs that do that. Not only this today, thank you to the Social Services Commission for the work they did in putting this together, but we have the Hometown Heroes program. You can drive down the streets of Torrance and remember those that have served. We have the Bocce Boys, 2 of them in the room right now, Bob Chioda and Joel Massa, both veterans. Members of our social service. They're the embodiment of volunteers. As a government official, we have people coming to us all the time saying, I would like to do this. Can we have some money for this? We need to improve this. A lot of ask. But very few of them step up and volunteer to get the job done themselves, and that's what these 2 individuals did. They raised the money, a large portion of the money, to put in the bocce courts, which many, many people in our society are enjoying today. So thank you. I'm also thankful for the representation we enjoy at all levels of government, the people that are watching out for our veterans. But especially 2 I'd like to recognize. Congresswoman Maxine Waters. After my time in the military back in 2004, I found myself walking the halls of Capitol Hill with some other veterans, eager to share our stories with our elected representatives. And I remember meeting with Congressman Waters, and she was one of the first people to step up and say, tell me your stories, I want to know what I can do to help. And she continues that fight today, so thank you. Also, Congressmember Ted Lieu, a veteran himself. There had been an ongoing fight at that West LA VA, years, even decades, to make sure that it was dedicated solely to the use of veterans, because that is what the original deed from the 1800s stated. And that was a losing fight for many years. There was an enterprise car rental, there were dry cleaners, there were all sorts of private businesses taking over the campus of that VA. But because of Ted's bill and his work on Capitol Hill, I can say that the West LA VA has once again been returned to veterans. So as we celebrate veterans today, just remember, our duty didn't end when we took off the uniform. Our duty continues today. So thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day. Let's go do our duty.